Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on, what are we, Sunday the 28th of June. And in the headlines today, three big games in the NRL, including a thriller. We had another thriller in the Super Rugby Aotearoa. We also have got a big sixth round tie in the FA Cup that's ongoing right as we speak, and also big games in the basketball and netball. Wow, how much sport have we got at the moment after being starved of it for so long? You are starting the day the best way here on New Zealand Sports Radio, up to date with all of the latest, or all the important sports news. And let's just crack on straight away into that football. And Aston Villa have lost to Wolverhampton Wanderers 0-1 at home in the Premier League. But in the FA Cup, they are into extra time, 111 minutes already gone. Norwich and Man United are 1-1. Let's hope we get you a final result before the end of the show. Moving on into the Belarusian Premier League, our favourite league. Obviously, big wins yesterday. We reported for NHX, but no one's managed anything like that overnight. Minsk and Shakhtar fought a 1-1 draw, while then Neyman Gordon managed a 1-0 win over Dynamo Brest. Bate and Dynamo Minsk are currently playing. They're into the 60th minute there, which is a 0-0 draw. So yes, low-scoring affairs overnight. I'm now going to hand you over to Stephen, who is going to take us through our birthdays this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Paul, and good morning to everybody tuning into New Zealand Sport Radio. And what has been a very wet or damp sort of weekend, but it hasn't dampened the spirits of many of you out there indulging. And it's an even better weekend for these three recipients, because in birthdays today we have a former All Black who had a brother in the Irish rugby camp, a former tie in New Zealand Rugby League International, and a New Zealand Black Fern. And that's where we start our birthdays this morning. Eldora Aitonu, born this day, the 28th of June 1991, is a rugby union player from New Zealand. She made her debut for the Black Ferns in 2015 and was selected for the 2017 Women's Rugby World Cup squad. In the highest level of New Zealand domestic women's rugby competition, Aitonu plays for Auckland Storm, as does her sister Linda Aitonu. She spent a season playing in England and has also played rugby in Italy. Staying with the oval ball game, Dwayne Mann, born this day, the 28th of June 1965, is a former New Zealand Rugby League footballer who played in the 80s and the 90s and coached in the 2000s. A Tongan and New Zealand international representative, hooker, he captained both sides. Mann played his club football for New Zealand sides Glenora. He also played for North Harbour, Auckland Warriors and Counties Manukau, as well as English club Warrington. And finally, Bernie McCarhill, born this day, the 28th of June 1964, is a former rugby union player from New Zealand who played for Auckland and the All Blacks. McCarhill was first chosen for the first World Cup in 1987 and played in the pool match against Argentina and was a replacement in the quarterfinal against Scotland and the semi-final against Wales. He was a backup midfield player until 1991 when he played in 4 of the World Cup matches. He is the brother of Sean McCarhill, a former Irish rugby international. So pretty much keeping that international theme well and truly covered across both the southern and the northern hemisphere. I'll be back with lead news shortly, Paul.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And we wish them all a happy birthday today. Moving on then into rugby union news. And held off a big comeback by the Highlanders to win last night 27-24 at Eden Park in front of nearly 30,000 people. Another big crowd there yesterday evening. Yes, it had been wet during the day, but thankfully the rain held off during the game itself. Hoskins Satutu showed his class and skills, both kicking the ball as well as running the ball as well. A person who's growing in stature, and more calls for him to be included in the All Blacks later this year if they get to play. Also, Caleb Clark had a big game as well after his grandfather passed away earlier in the day. So our thoughts with the Clark family, and very impressive performance by Caleb in memory of his granddad. But yeah, he put in an absolute stonking performance. In other places, we had the Ardie Surveyor turned out for his Wellington club with Ma'anonu as the coach for the day as well. So it's interesting seeing Ardie in black and white stripes rather than the sort of all black or yellow jerseys that we're used to seeing him in. Clearly, he needs the game time, as we've said previously about this. Also, the Chiefs have lost 2 players to France. Tyler Ardron, who I think we mentioned in various shows and review shows, has moved up to France, but also to Manu is also moving to France as well. He has been named this weekend for the game against the Crusaders that is on later today at 3:30. So look out for that game at 3:30 between the Crusaders and the Chiefs. The Chiefs are obviously looking for their first win of the season, and the Crusaders, well, looking up north at the Blues and thinking, hey, we've got a new challenger on the blocks, and we'll be looking to keep pace with them. Remember, there is no grand final in the Super Rugby Aotearoa this year, and so every point does matter. So, Stephen, you got out, though, for the really important rugby, though, didn't you? Out and about in Auckland to watch College Rifles versus Ponsonby in the Premier Club competition up there.
Absolutely, it's the Auckland, it's the Goodyear Auckland Club Rugby competition, and real boisterous home crowd at College Rifles Park, and the home side started well, put Ponsonby under a lot of pressure, but Ponsonby once again showed why they've been the premier champions of Auckland Club Rugby so many times, taking the one opportunity they had close before halftime. Had some really good players running around taking that opportunity too. Was Jordan Trainer, who's played a bit of Super Rugby both for the Blues and the Chiefs, I suspect. We also had Danny Tusitala, Waimana Riedlinger Kappa, who's also played the Mitre 10 Cup. So you had players of that calibre running around. Not to mention, if you look out for one of my interviews I did with former Counties Manukau and Bay of Plenty Steamers hooker Joe Royal, still running around and adding his bit to club rugby. Yeah, it was superb. But once again, Ponsonby showing they are going to be hard to beat again this year, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. But the big question on my list is: does Tani Tasiala still have the bleached hair, so he's easy to pick out? And with all of these bleached hairs now we have in the Blues, does he stick out as having this such an outrageous haircut anymore, or is it just part of the normal? I guess.
Oh, he sticks out. He's one hell of a footballer, actually, and very versatile. He scored just after half-time a brilliant runaway try where he latched onto a College Rifles mistake, took the final pass from Jordan Trader and galloped away a good 60-odd metres for the try. And on that occasion, he had moved out to the wing, Paul. So he moved from halfback out to the wing. So very versatile. And yes, stood out like the proverbial sore thumb with the bleached hair. It was great to get amongst it.
Now, folks, every weekend we do try and get out amongst it. So Stephen got out, obviously, this weekend. Last weekend, I was out there watching Melville versus Hamilton Old Boys. Hamilton Old Boys put in another win this weekend as well. So congratulations to them. And also, Arsham was out at Suburbs with coaching the under-9s. So we do try and get out to grassroots rugby. We do try and get some, and also to other sports as well, to bring you a whole range of sports here on New Zealand Sports Radio. I'm going to hand you over to Stephen now, who's going to take us through our NRL update.
Thank you very much, Paul. Well, getting amongst it, we had 3 games yesterday from the NRL, and one of them an absolute beauty, but we'll get to that very, very shortly. We'll start with the first game. The North Queensland Cowboys, after putting on 26 unanswered points in the first half, held on to win comfortably 32-20 against Newcastle Knights in the first game of a triple header Saturday, played at Queensland Country Bank Stadium in Townsville. A central figure in what only one can describe as an upset was Cowboys playmaker Jake Clifford. He scored a wonderful individual try and set up another with a kick and ran for 106 metres in a terrific display. Clifford, who has been deputising in the number 7 jersey for the injured Mitchell Morgan, has still only played 26 NRL matches. Green understands the challenges of being a first-grade halfback better than most, and that's the coach, having represented his state and country in his heyday, and was pleased with the 22-year-old's progress. I thought he was in the game for longer. He's a good young kid and a very good player, but has been guilty, as most young players are, of drifting in and out of games, according to head coach Green. The Cowboys now sit on the edge of the top 8 and have injured stars Morgan, Valentine Holmes and John Asiata yet to return. They face a daunting period with matches against the Eels, the Roosters, Panthers, Sea Eagles and the Raiders ahead. Despite the fight back by the Newcastle Knights in the second half, the match was as good as ever, with the hosts leading 26-0 at the break. That final score again, Cowboys 32, Knights 20. We move on to the second game of our triple header Saturday. The Titans sent the Broncos season into a dire spiral with an Ash Taylor masterclass, inspiring a dominant 30-12 win at Suncorp Stadium on Saturday evening. The Broncos were booed off at halftime by the crowd, a small crowd of 6,262 when they trailed 22-0 after being ambushed by the Gold Coast. Former captain Justin Hodges was in a state of shock as he crossed to the Fox Sports studios. This is the first time I have ever heard a Brisbane Broncos side booed off at halftime, according to Hodges. It's Justin Hodges. It was the Titans' biggest winning margin over the Broncos in their history. And now Anthony Seibol's team faces the dire prospect of being in last place at the end of round 7 if the Bulldogs beat the West Tigers, and that's today. To compound the Brisbane's woes, Matt Lodge hobbled off in the 65th minute, clutching his left knee. However, on the other side of the ledger, Ash Taylor owned the first half with his kicking game right on song. He had plenty of mates with Jai Arrow, Sam Lisioni, and Moi Aki Foti Aika and Keegan Hipgrave at their destructive best. The Titans were hungrier from the kickoff, and it showed through most of the encounter. The Titans, who led 22-0 at the break, courtesy of 4 tries, which included 2 to veteran winger Anthony Don, were always in control of the match, but eventually sealed the deal in the 76th minute with a try to winger Philip Sabi. That final score again. Titans 30, Broncos 12. Now, I believe the Broncos play the Warriors next week, so it's really going to be the dance of the desperates, I've got to say. But there was nothing desperate about the game that we saw, the final game in the NRL round 7. In fact, it took an 87th minute field goal in extra time to Clint Gutherson, who delivered the dramatic blow with a field goal in a 25-24 Golden Point NRL victory over a plucky Canberra outfit. However, the win might have come at a cost, with the star halfback Mitchell Moses suffering a suspected calf injury in the first half of Saturday night's contest. Moses appeared to show signs of discomfort when trying to come off the defensive line before eventually limping off Bankwest Stadium field. Parramatta looked set to overcome the loss of their chief playmaker when they surged to a 12-point lead with 12 points remaining. However, the Raiders, who are very, very plucky, stormed back to force extra time through 2 Shans Nicole Clonstead tries in 3 minutes. The Canberra fullback first pounced on a George Williams kick in the 76th minute before finishing off an Elliot Whitehead line break in the return set. Jack Whiten, Gutherson, Williams all had opportunities with field goals in the first period of extra time, but all failed to convert. But the Eels captain didn't waste his second opportunity, stepping up from 30 metres out to seal Parramatta's 6th win from their opening 7 games. The Eels remain at the top of the ladder, while the Raiders have lost 3 of their past 4 matches and drop as low as 7th, depending on results. Final score again, Eels 25, Raiders 24. Who said we don't like the drop goal, do we, Paul? And finally, in games today, look out for the Manly Sea Eagles when they take on Cronulla Sharks at Central Coast Stadium from 6:05 p.m. New Zealand time. And to wrap things up, Canterbury Bankstown versus Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs take on the West Tigers at Bankwest Stadium, and that's a field they've been talking about, probably getting a lot of action. That doesn't help, and that kicks off at 8:30 p.m. New Zealand time, and that's all our league news today. It's been a super bumper edition of Rugby League, and we've still got these 2 games to come up this evening. We'll have the table for you tomorrow morning when we come back, but also I'm pretty sure Brad and also Sanjay will have plenty to say in the standoff on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. And I'm really happy chappy this morning because I am getting the hang of my teleprompter, Paul. Yay!
Congratulations, Stephen, getting your tech all sorted. And yes, I think plenty for the boys to talk about on Wednesday evening on the standoff. Just to get you up, so with those football scores, Man United have secured the win 1-2 after extra time, beating Norwich City in that 6th round FA Cup game. And it looks like Dynamo Minsk are on the path to victory, having taken a 0-2 lead over Bate over in the Belarusian Premier League. 4 minutes left in that game. Moving on to the netball, and the Mystics got the expected win over the Steel of 46-42, perhaps a bit closer than was expected. And the Steel still have not picked up a win this season, so they have 3 losses on the bounce, whereas the Northern Mystics are 3 wins from 3, and that puts them top of the table currently, with the Pulse still having a extra game to play. Today we will see the Southern Steel have to back up and play yet again, this time against the Stars. So that is going to be a big game. The Stars having picked up just their 1 win, which was their last game against the Tactics on Monday. So they're coming off the back of a win and will be full of plenty of confidence, whereas the Steel really still looking for win of the season. Moving on to the NZNBL, and 2 big games yesterday. First off, the winless Huskies against the winless Jets, both of them fighting out for their first win of the season. And boy, did the Manitou Jets do it in style. It finished 67-95, a dominating performance by the Jets, particularly by Hiram Harris, who really did dominate the paint with 21 rebounds. Wow. He also chipped in with 13 points. But this was not enough to get him the MVP of the game, because his teammate Tommy Vodanovic led the scoring with 38 points. A big game from him. So those two really did dominate. To the Jets to get their first win of the season. And then it was 2 teams that have had perfect records so far. The Canterbury Rams versus the Taranaki Mountaineers. And the Rams came out on top in that one, 112-101, a very high scoring game. In fact, the highest scoring game of the season so far. That Canterbury Rams score matched the 112 that the Taranaki Mountaineers managed in the open game, but that 101 is the highest losing score, yes, so far this season. So absolute scoring bonanza there to put the Rams top of the table, and I say giving the Mountaineers their first loss of the season. That's win by the Jets made them up 4 with the Huskies, the Bulls, and the Giants all still looking for their first wins of the season. And one of those will come tonight when the Franklin Bulls take on the Auckland Huskies. Two Auckland-based teams going head-to-head for the first time ever. That's going to be massive tonight at 5:30. That's followed up by the Nelson Giants against the Manawatu Jets. So the Manawatu, Nelson Giants still looking for their first win against Manawatu Jets, who will be obviously very, very happy with their win, but having to back-to-back games. Will they be too tired tonight? Will the Jets be able to take advantage? Both those games, say on today. So Catch will bring you the updates on their scores tomorrow. Finally, in the golf and Kiwis, Wilkinson and Lee both missed the cut at the championship on the PGA Tour. Unfortunately, Todd and Johnson lead the field on 9 under. So yeah, shame that our two representatives there got knocked out. You have now started the day the best way, up to date with all the important sports news. But hey, Stephen just wants to come in with a late update.
Oh, very quick word. Listen, I've just got a couple of shout-outs out there. A couple of people who I know quite well having birthdays today. Phil Kingsley-Jones, former manager of John Olomu and a personal friend. Just want to say a very, very happy birthday today, Phil, and also to James Waitford, who's probably the biggest Warriors and Ellerslie Eagles rugby league fan that I know. James, I hope you have an absolutely great day. And also a privilege to meet Robbo today, who's a guy who gets around and watches a lot of club rugby. Wants to send us a few reports. So, Robbo, it was a real privilege and a pleasure to meet you yesterday. And yes, we would love to have you on our team. In fact, I'm going to throw it out there if there's anybody who can throw us some who are out and about watching any sort of live sport. Listen, flick us those results through to New Zealand Sports Radio, because we want to keep all your grassroots sport up to date. Thanks again, Paul, for your time.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Yes, don't forget, folks, you can listen to us on the go. Just download our podcast, just search for New Zealand Sports Radio on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all your favourites podcatcher, or obviously you can watch us here on Facebook. We'll be here at 7 a.m. every single morning, 7 days a week, bringing you the morning sports briefing.